Thanks for visiting the patient and the weather today. I'm meteorologist Al Peterlin. I'd like to talk about the weather health risk for January 4th, 2026. We do keep additional graphics available at tpatw.com. And of course, we do have a storefront on Amazon. Purchases made through our storefront on Amazon do support the activities of Patient Weather. Looking at our surface map for the 4th, and it is really quite simple. We have high pressure dominating almost the eastern two-thirds of the country. We still have that cold air flowing down the eastern side of the high, and a lot of warm air running up the backside of that high. You'll note we have the atmospheric river flowing into the west again, with the massive swath of moisture stretching all the way across California, Nevada, Washington, Oregon, on into the Rockies and covering much of those areas from Utah to Idaho. Note we still have that swirl of snow up here about the lakes, and I'm sure there'll be some lake effect up even into New England. Looking at our vitality index, which is our composite of where the changes in weather might have an impact on individuals, you can see we usually have this area of impact here in the Pacific Northwest. We have a significant swath here in the northern plains and the upper Mississippi Valley, and then across much, very extensive up the eastern seaboard, and really starting along the Gulf, Louisiana, moving all the way across, and you'll see it cutting off and leaving a difference between two areas of contrast here in Florida. Looking at pressure change, which is a measure of interest for many with migraine and asthma and arthritis issues, we do have rising pressure here in the Pacific Northwest. We have falling pressure here in the northern plains, the upper Mississippi Valley, and we have rising pressure extending all the way across the Gulf through the northern to central portions of Florida, up the spine of the Appalachians, covering everything east of the Great Lakes, and holding at the New York border. Looking at temperature change, the changes, of course, are not dramatic in the east, holding cool, but there's that significant rise or warming up the plains. Dew point temperature showing very much the same thing, where we have rising dew points here up the plains. We have a bit of falling dew points here in the east. Looking at vapor pressure, it confirms the same pattern. However, what I do think is very interesting is the vapor pressure shows a more striking and immediate contrast across the state of Florida, with the rising dew point temperatures here in southern Florida, the falling dew point temperatures here in northern Florida and along the Gulf. Looking at our measure of oxygen availability in the atmosphere, you can see we have a risk of migraine from central California north across Oregon into Washington and across into Vancouver. We have another very significant area of migraine from East Texas across Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and northern and parts of central Florida, then swinging across Carolina and off the shore of North Carolina. However, the real risk of intense risk, narrow risk of migraine runs right up the spine of the Appalachians through western, or rather eastern Tennessee, eastern Kentucky, western North Carolina, western Virginia, the state of West Virginia, eastern Ohio, much of western Pennsylvania, Maryland, and on into New York. Then becomes a little bit more spotty as we move into New England, especially across Vermont, New Hampshire, and a little touch of Massachusetts. Not so much in Maine, although right at the very northeastern tip of Maine, we can see we have a risk of migraine. Another area of interest is where the risk of asthma and arthritis extends all the way from West Texas across Oklahoma, up to the Dakotas and picking up eastern portions of Montana, and then from Missouri clearing up through Iowa into Minnesota and Wisconsin and Illinois. The issue here is, remember, with flu season rapidly moving in, with respiratory risks there and the respiratory risk for asthma, it's a difficult period for this time of year for this part of the country. Thanks for visiting the patient and the weather. Your comments are appreciated, and if you heard, won't you tell us where you're located?